Today on Katie. Overcoming a stuttering disorder. ABC News anchor Byron Pitts on how he beat the odds against illiteracy and a stutter to become a national news anchor. Live from Studio One in New York, it's Katie.
But first, we begin right now with our big conversation. This one is about a very important but often overlooked condition. What do Winston Churchill, Marilyn Monroe, Vice President Joe Biden, Samuel L. Jackson, and Bruce Willis all have in common? Anybody know? Stuttering. That's right. You are a smart audience. They are all stutterers. In fact, this debilitating speech disorder affects more than 3 million people in this country, many of whom suffer in silence. And for those like Joel Viera, a sophomore from New York City, it's a daily struggle. Here's his story.
For a person who stutters, introducing yourself is like one of the hardest things to do.
When Joelle started speaking, I noticed immediately that something was not right.
I first noticed that my speech was different from everyone else's when I was 4 or 5.
I just recognized that he was stuttering. We would tell him to slow down. We would try to finish his sentences. We would rush him. We made all the typical mistakes.
When someone would try to rush me along, it would frustrate me a lot because it makes you feel kind of like makes me feel more obviously different.
I worried like any other father. I always thought it was going to affect his self-esteem. I knew that he would maybe be afraid to talk, be nervous to talk, and you have to talk everywhere.
Towards high school, people like make jokes and stuff.
Some mocking and some, laughing and taunting.
Kids would point out to me that I stutter.
His feelings would get hurt. It was heartbreaking. Joel's love of music helped build his confidence because he's really good at it. He loves it.
Music that I do is mostly jazz, but I also do a lot of rock and funk bass.
He's a sophomore. He auditioned for the senior jazz band, and he got in. It's like so cool. I surfed the net for a few days, a few weeks. When I found the American Institute for Stuttering, I said, this is the place.
He taught me a bunch of speech techniques to get out of these blocks or stutters.
It's still part of him, but he controls it.
Foolish.
Joel is one of the bravest teenagers I know. Acknowledging that he stutters, he still went about his daily life.
I haven't really let stuttering hold me back at all, and it's only going to get better from here.
So please welcome Joel Viera and his dad, Eddie. So nice to see you both. Thanks so much for coming in.
Great to be here.
And Joel, I know you, as we heard, you're 15 now,
right.
A sophomore in high school. And so you've been dealing with a stuttering issue for about 10 years now. What do you struggle most with on a daily basis?
With stuttering, I often struggle with keeping eye contact during a block, because people with stutter tend to kind of panic during a block because it's pretty embarrassing, and we often feel like we're kind of like burdening the person we're talking to by making them wait to get out of the block. But I also struggle with keeping the sentence going after a block, because sometimes the message could get a little bit distorted after a stutter or block.
And yeah, I could see how probably you would feel it's sort of a chain reaction, right? You're trying to talk, you can't quite get the word out. The person probably, you read their facial expression, then you react to them, and then you get embarrassed and maybe put your head down. And so that's understandable why eye contact might be difficult in those situations. And it's interesting, I'm very conscious about talking to Joel, because I know that some of the things you did, Eddie, early on when he was a little boy were actually not what you're supposed to do. In fact, I'm not even sure I should have said right as you were talking. I think I probably did that because I was trying to encourage you in a funny way. But it's really important. You shouldn't speed someone up. You shouldn't slow them down. And the worst thing is you should not finish their sentences, should you?
And yes, that's correct. Well, I mean, after going to the Institute and being informed, I felt so guilty. It was awful because I committed.
Well, we don't want to make you feel guilty.
I know. Well, I
did. You were doing
I did it to myself.
Thing.
Yeah, because I committed all the instinctive mistakes that somebody would commit by, like, for example, trying to finish his sentences for him, guessing what he was going to say, getting upset, rushing, and even saying, "Spit it out."
Well, I know that you noticed that when he was just about 4 or 5, as we heard in the tape. And initially, Eddie, did you think, oh, this is just sort of trouble with developing speech patterns, he's going to grow out of it?
I did. I figured he's 3, 4, he's learning how to speak. Every child learns in a different pattern, but after about 6 months or a year, it was distinctive that he was stuttering. So I said, okay, he's definitely a stutterer. We're going to have to do something about it.
And you transferred, I know, to a new high school this year.
Yeah.
And you were previously, Joelle, in a school where you had known the kids since, I guess, kindergarten or preschool.
Yeah, exactly.
So how challenging was that for you to change schools? Because you had to introduce yourself and some of the struggles you sometimes have to a whole new group of kids.
Yeah, with the original high school that I attended, I had already told everyone that I stuttered, so everyone was already comfortable with my speech, and I was comfortable with stuttering in front of them, and I was never worried about speaking to any of them. And a lot of my teachers also knew that I stuttered as well, but after transferring, I had to do that all over again, which I'm not that afraid with advertising to people. I actually much rather them know that I stutter, because then it makes me more comfortable to speak with them. But I had to tell a lot of my teachers that I stutter, and all my new friends too.
Right, and do you feel like it's been okay and that you've been accepted?
Yeah, none of them have really made fun of me at all about it yet, and they've all been really supportive about it.
Well, I think it's great that, you say you want people to know what your situation is, because I imagine for a lot of kids, they tend to, as we said, suffer in silence. It's easy to become withdrawn and isolated. So good for you, by the way, for being so open about this, really. It's impressive. And as we saw in the piece, Joelle went to the American Institute for Stuttering, which is here in New York. Heather Grossman is the clinical director. And Heather, can you explain in simple terms why people stutter?
Well, we know stuttering is a neurologic-based condition, but it doesn't mean that there's one area of the brain that we can pinpoint as causative. We kind of think of speech and language as kind of a conveyor belt because, vocabulary and the sounds of the language, there's so many pieces that have to be in place for us to speak fluently. And in a way, I kind of think of it as that could be a difficulty at any place along the conveyor belt, and there'll be disfluency at the end.
So it's different parts of the brain that don't seem to be communicating appropriately. And can it be exacerbated by external factors like family stress or family dynamics or, just plain old nervousness?
Well, we kind of think of it, the neurologic piece, which you acquire genetically, is that you're sort of predisposed to it. Then the environment comes along, puts stress on. For some children, it's just the stresses of learning normal speech and language. For other children, it is family dynamics. There might be a tremendous amount of changes going on in the family. But typically, it really is just the stress of learning speech and language that kind of puts one drop too many in the bucket and it spills over, and that's stuttering.
And it's oftentimes genetic. Does anyone else in your family, Eddie, stutter?
They don't, actually.
Yeah, because I read that 61%.
And I have a pretty large family.
You have a big family and no stutterers.
No stutterers, yes.
And what are the treatments, Heather? What is most effective? Because I think obviously there are different kinds of stuttering, and I know different kinds of treatment as well.
Absolutely. Well, it also depends very much on the age. So with very, very young children, we tend to try to do some indirect things first, figure out what things in the environment might be creating the family dynamic stress, and we try to work with that first. As the child gets a little bit older, the therapy is a little bit more directive, and we focus so much on confidence building. As Joelle said, being open with stuttering is so important because we know that when you try to hide it, it just creates so much more tension, and that just makes the problem so much worse.
And we heard Joelle talk about blocking. Are there exercises that can help with blocking when that does in fact happen?
Yes.
For example, what have you done for Joelle? Because obviously you've helped him a lot.
Well, believe it or not, Joelle has actually worked in some cases on stuttering on purpose, because we know when a person stutters on purpose, they're just changing the stress of trying so hard not to stutter. And then we also might help, I know Joelle has worked on like working through a block, kind of like that, like when you feel yourself getting stuck, being aware enough to release the tension and kind of just move on.
Right, because I was going to say, I think it probably, you know, you're so self-conscious and then you kind of get really tight.
And then the fear gets
and then it
worse.
just makes it even worse when you're trying to talk because you feel so much pressure about that. It's interesting that Joelle's very good at music because, you know, people like Carly Simon stutter and yet they don't at all when they sing. Why is that?
Well, stuttering is a communication disorder, okay? So it really happens in the moment when you're communicating with another person. When we're singing, we're not really communicating. We're just kind of singing words. And when we sing,
we don't have to really think about the words because they've already been thought of by the composer or the lyricist, right?
Exactly. And because of the melody, we're now drawing off other areas of the brain, like on the other side of the brain, so it's sort of a different network.
Well, it's really fascinating. And Joelle, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your coming in and telling us about your situation. And we're so proud of what you've been able to accomplish so far. Eddie, thank you as well.
Thank you, Katie, for having us.
And up next, you guys are going to stick around because I'm very excited to introduce you to my friend Byron Pitts, an Emmy-winning journalist and also a stutterer. That's right after this.
If I'm a king, where's my power? Can I form a government? Can I levy a tax? Declare a war? No. And yet I'm the seat of all authority. Why? Because the nation believes that when I speak for them. But I can't speak.
That, of course, was a clip from the Oscar-winning film The King's Speech, starring Colin Firth as King George VI. That movie helped raise awareness for a speech disorder that affects 60 million people worldwide. For most, stuttering begins between the ages of 2 and 4. But with specialized therapy, there's an 80% chance of managing the disorder, but it can be a lifelong battle. With 10 Emmys and countless hours in front of the camera, Byron Pitts seemed like a natural. But what most people don't realize is that for Byron, it's not as easy as it looks. Please welcome Chief National Correspondent, ABC News anchor, and my friend, Byron Pitts. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. I invited you on the show. Nice to see you. So, Byron, thanks so much for coming in. Byron and I work together at CBS, and I never get to see him. I said I had to see you just by inviting you to come on my show.
Exactly.
So it's so great to have
lunch,
you.
right?
Yeah, I'll buy lunch. So let me ask you about the King's Speech, because I understand when you went to see that movie, Byron, it was incredibly emotional.
Yeah. I almost walked out because I was reliving my own childhood. I mean, think about it. One of the most powerful men on earth felt powerless because of his stutter. The shame I felt as a child, as a young adult, as a college student, all that came washing back.
And when did you first realize that you had this issue? Because I guess for every person who stutters, they have that one moment they think, I am not speaking like the rest of the people I know, or like many of the people I know.
I was about 5 years old. My mother, like Joel's dad, would finish my sentences. My siblings would finish my sentences. And I would feel them tense up when we were in public, at church or someplace else. And I remember I was about 7. I heard some teachers at my school talking in the hallway about me. And they were talking about my language issues. And one of them said, oh, he's just stupid. And that stuck with me, like, okay, because I was raised to respect authority. And so if an adult said I was stupid, then I must be stupid.
You wrote a book a few years back called Step Out on Nothing. And I want you to read this excerpt, if you could, for us, Byron. They wanted me to read it, and I thought, Byron's here, he wrote it, he should read it. Yeah. Right. Do you want to wear my reading glasses?
Well, I got my hearing aid right here. All right, hear better. Yeah. This is a section I think about my stutter. I was simply a freak, the strange one, the one who couldn't get the words out, couldn't do a simple thing like speak clearly. For me, it was like living as a prisoner inside a cell. All the things my heart wanted to say, the times I wanted to yell at my parents to stop fighting, stand up to a bully who taunted me, and the times I just wanted lemonade in the school cafeteria, but could only say the word soda. I never liked soda, but would never drink it if I had a choice.
So I think obviously as a child, this must have been excruciating and so frustrating. And I know you were captain of the football team in high school, and yet that actually affected the way you interacted with your teammates.
Oh, sure. Because there are certain words I still can't say and certainly couldn't say in high school. So when the coach would go over plays during the week and he would call the signal, there was like J words I can't say. So those were the plays for that week. I would say to my teammates, okay, guys, love that play. So during the game, I was, okay, guys, love that play. It was my way of covering up for my stutter because I couldn't say the words.
And I know that this must have taken a big toll on your self-esteem. I mean, how can it not? How did you keep it from really making you feel less than, Byron?
You know, when Joel was out here, I was thinking, when I saw his dad, I thought of my late mother who passed away 2 years ago. She was my rock. She stood up for me. My mother used to say, she said, son, smart people can think their problems away. We got to wrestle ours to the ground. So we're going to take this issue, we're going to wrestle it. A woman of great faith. I learned my own faith tradition at her knee, and so it was her optimistic spirit that says, son, we will figure this out in God's time, and we did.
And you also had a man in college who was really, you know, your guardian angel in many ways. How did he help you?
Dr. Robinson, he was a speech professor, had no background in speech pathology, but noticed my issue and said, son, what's your problem? Like, he wasn't a very gentle guy. What's your problem?
Sometimes probably it was good to be direct,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, my mother was certainly direct, so I could respond to that. And I explained to him my issue. He says, okay, come with me. So he gave me a radio show, a live radio show on campus, thinking that would be a good place for a stutterer to hide, because he wanted me to confront the issue. Then he would have me do things like, he would have me read the newspaper with pencils in my mouth so I could focus on what it felt like to speak clearly. He would have me read things backwards so I could focus not on the conversation, but on the words, so I could begin to get a sense of what speaking properly felt like.
And you still deal with this, as I mentioned, on a daily basis. I mean, you have to do exercises in the morning, kind of anticipating some of the, especially I would imagine in interviews.
Sure.
Some of the conversations that you're going to have later in the day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the effects for me at this stage of my life, like, I am not a casual person. I don't have casual conversations. When I get up in the morning, I think about, who am I likely to talk to today? What will that conversation be? And let me have that conversation in my own head. So I can, like, for instance, there are words that I avoid. And so I have a replacement list of words I use. So I thought, okay, I'm talking to Katie later today. Sister girl's gonna ask me about stuttering. And so
that's what he calls me.
Right. So what will that conversation go like? And you know, when I talk to people later today who I anticipate I'm going to talk to, I've had that conversation already in my head.
So it's something you really just, you know, it's not easy for you to just speak, as you said, casually or just extemporaneously.
Right.
So that must be hard, because do you feel like you can't be super spontaneous in language?
You know, Katie, I was raised to be an optimist by choice, right? And so for me, I count it all joy. You know, this is who I am, flawed as I may be. And, you know, for me, stuttering at this stage of my life is a gift, right? Because as a stutterer, as I'm sure as our young friend knows, it forces you to be a good listener. It helps you to be more empathetic. You know, as journalists, we're in the business of giving voice to the voiceless. I know what it means to be voiceless. So how cool is it every single day I have the opportunity somewhere in the world to give voice to the voiceless?
That's wonderful. And Joelle, when you see someone like Byron, we can clap for Byron, but beautifully said, by the way, Byron, not surprisingly, because Byron is a beautiful writer. I know that from watching his work over the years. But Joel, when you see someone like Byron who had this issue and he's so accomplished, you know, how does it make you feel?
It's extremely inspirational. Gives me more and more courage to not let stuttering hold me back at all.
And what advice would you give Joelle, Byron?
My man, count it all joy. I mean, you are a rock star. I mean, I was a grown man, or as my mama would say, a grown-ass man, before I was able to say publicly the truth that you speak now. I consider my stutter a gift, right? And so embrace yours as a gift. I mean, you know as a teenager that your dad loves you. He's got your back. Most kids don't learn that lesson, if ever, until later in life, right? You have a circle of friends who know your challenge and love you anyway. How many people don't know who their friends are? You know who your friends are. So my advice to you, my brother, count it all joy. Embrace it. You're going to do great things in your life. Great things in your life. And this stutter is all part of that. So tell your story.
All right. Well, Byron, thank you. You're like, praise the Lord. Anyway, Eddie, Joelle, Heather, Byron, thank you all so much. And we'll be back right after this. Nice work.